Hey everybody, it's Karyn Bryant for MMA Heat. Welcome to the podcast. Once again, I'm here with.
Alan Joban, the Brahma.
That's right. And of course, you guys all know that Alan is a UFC welterweight, and big things went down at UFC 195 this past weekend. So we're definitely going to talk about that, and we'll talk about the Rizin show, the return of Fedor, and of course, with it being the first podcast of the new year, you always got to talk about what your highlights were from the year before, and if you want to make any resolutions, I don't know. But first and foremost, did you have a good Christmas and New Year? Was it a good holiday for you?
I did, Karen. I enjoyed the holidays tremendously. That was part of the goal. It was after my last fight in 2015, take the rest of the year off. As I said last show, I moved into a new home.
Right.
I broke it in very well. I think I ordered every pay-per-view from the time I moved in until now at my place. So, I did some entertaining. I broke in the house. I enjoyed it. I'm back to training camp now. I'm ready to get the year going, start it off with a bang.
Cool. And what was the number one gift that your little man got? What was he most excited about?
Man, well, my son Cage, he wanted a scooter very badly. Santa Claus brought him a scooter, although it was a cheap scooter. It wasn't the one that he wanted.
Oh no.
He was very happy. He also got a BB-8.
Yeah, I got one of those for Wade.
I saw. Okay, that was you. Okay. I couldn't remember if I saw you playing with that on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, we were chasing. The dog doesn't really care for the BB-8, and so we were kind of like messing with her with that. But yeah, no, those things are fun. It's actually we were saying we need to do more with it and have it go patrol the house and do all that stuff. So that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear you had a good time. Yeah, I had a good one. We had fun. Wade's folks were here, and they just left yesterday, so the house is still kind of upside down. But we had a good time, and of course I did have to go to work for New Year's Day, so I don't go out and get crazy on New Year's Eve anyway. But we had a good time. So let's get to it. We have round one coming up here in just a second, and of course round one we want to talk about what happened between Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. First, sometimes we build these fights up. It's gonna be amazing. You know what I mean? It's gonna be fantastic, and then you get there, and it was like, sometimes that happens. But this one I think totally delivered. To be honest, Robbie's been one of my favorite fighters forever. Like since Strikeforce, I did before then even, before I did stuff with him on CBS, always one of my favorites. But I did think going into the fifth round that we were going to have an and new. I thought Carlos was up, 3-1 going into the fifth, and as we know, obviously the judges saw it 2-2 going into the fifth. And so Robbie retained his title. I'm not mad at that decision.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it, but I can see how people are going to talk about it for a while. What do you think?
I think you were on the same page as the majority of America.
Yeah.
I think not only, here's the thing. Commentary in the UFC, commentary in general plays a big part on the reaction of the audience. If Joe Rogan is teaching you and telling you, Robbie's ahead, look at, Robbie's doing this,
right.
and the way that it's commentated, and they do a very good job of it. Joe Rogan does a very good job of trying not to be biased.
Right.
But whatever they're feeding you, whatever they're telling you, and if Joe Rogan is telling you that he thinks Robbie's down and he needs to finish the fight, America's going to believe that.
Yeah.
I agree with Joe Rogan. Sometimes I don't always believe it. Sometimes I don't always agree with Joe Rogan in different fights. This one, I felt the same way. I think the third round was the deciding factor.
Exactly.
I didn't look at the scorecards. You said you had them posted on your site. The third round probably was a deciding factor, and I had it the same way. Condit was outworking him. If he was doing damage or not, he was still outworking him. He was still throwing more shots, and is still pushing the pace. Robbie came back and delivered one of Robbie's badass rounds. I mean, that's just the thing. That was the kind of the spectacle of this fight. We're going to see both of these guys are kind of like warriors. They both like to dig deep, and Condit said it himself that he's the kind of guy and I totally related to this when he said that when he's bloodied up, when he's sweating, when the fight's in the middle of the fight, that's when he feels the most alive. And I completely get it. That's why the walkout is the most nerve-wracking thing, because you haven't been hit yet. Your endorphins, your adrenaline hasn't kicked in. Once you're fighting, it becomes instinctual. You start to enjoy it, and that's how Condit fights, and that's how Robbie fights as well. And we got to see when both of these guys stepped into the fifth round and they were both bloodied up, who would win that battle. Robbie did amazing in the fifth round, but I thought we were going to hear a new champion. I was a bit surprised, and that's why I don't see why they're. I didn't watch the fight, the press conference after, but Have they even started talking about a second fight?
Yeah, and we'll get to that in round 2 of our own show because there is some developments that came up after the fight. The thing about that too is while we were watching it, I sit there. Obviously, I was working with Kenny and DC and Tyron for this one, and Tyron, of course, was kind of bugging out because he may have the next shot. It's
right.
something that he's supposed to have had, and he did beat Carlos Condit, and I don't care how many people want to bitch and moan about how he won. He has a win over Carlos Condit. Therefore, you know what I mean? It moves him up in the rankings, like it or not. And so, currently he's sitting there, and he's supposed to maybe get next. We all know supposed to means who knows what.
Next shot. Exactly.
Who knows what. But, watching that fight with them, and, Kenny and DC, obviously they know so much about this. And we're all trying to keep score among ourselves going into it. And we were like, okay, first round Carlos, second round Robbie, third round, I don't know. But mostly everybody was leaning toward Carlos. And the funny thing is, though, is when we talked about how aggressive Robbie needed to be, or how we thought Carlos was going to start doing some elbows, and Robbie landed this perfect elbow in the third round. And we wondered if some of the time Robbie was playing rope-a-dope, because like you said, like when he's in the firefight, that's when he's the most alive. And so part of the time we're like, is he just baiting him? I don't know, but it was frustrating to see him not let his hands go more, because obviously you know what happens when he did. So by the time it was the fifth round, we were like, well, some of the guys thought, like Tyron thought Carlos would maybe just get on his bicycle, because he's like, well, he's ahead. Why is he risking getting hit? Obviously, we knew that wasn't the case.
I remember that as well. I remember thinking, what is he doing? Is he rope-a-doping? I thought he was. Here's the thing. I think it was the third round as well, the round where I remember I had the fight at my house. I had all my friends over, and I remember saying, Robbie hasn't thrown a single strike in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
And the entire time, Carlos Condit was throwing front kicks and side kicks and jabs and spinning stuff. And he wasn't necessarily trying to knock out Robbie, but he was just keeping him off rhythm. And I feel like I've been in that rhythm before. I've been in that place before, too, where that's why we have rounds.
Keep going through the round. Sorry to keep going. Yeah.
I've been there, too, where you're losing a round, and then you go in there, you sit down, you coach, you kind of change your energy. You change your flow, you change your rhythm, you go back out there. And I feel like 2 minutes into that round, Carlos Condit was throwing so many things, front kicks, push kicks, jabs, and he just had Robbie, his rhythm was off. He couldn't sit in the pocket and throw heavy, and he kind of gave up on the round. He said, you know what, I don't have the rhythm, I can't get my timing, I'm just going to let him take this round, I'm not taking any damage, and I'm saving myself for the later rounds. I think that's what was going on in there. To touch on the fight one more time, I think I made a note of that I remember thinking is, although I thought Condit did win the fight, Robbie's the champion. Yeah. Robbie's the champion. And you have to, and like they say in boxing and other words, you have to beat the champion. You have to take the belt. And I look at it somewhat like instant replay in football.
Yeah.
If it's a controversial call, it needs to be indisputable evidence to turn it over. And I kind of think of it that way in fighting as well. If there's a 50-50 round and the champ is fighting, the champ deserves the round because you have to take it from him.
Yeah, and it's tricky too because it's all subjective. We know that, and also we know that seriously, sometimes the way the judges are sitting, they think something landed when actually it didn't. It really can be hard for them to tell. But when you do look at the statistics afterwards, there was a very big differential in punches landed by Carlos and punches landed by Robbie. And so they were saying that was the biggest negative, biggest differential for the winner. I believe it was like 84 punches or minus 84 or minus 82, something like that on Robbie's part to retain. But as we know, one of Robbie's punches is like 10 of somebody else's sometimes. Right?
That's exactly what I'm thinking as well. When Robbie would connect, Carlos's head would fly off his shoulders and he would fall down, and that made a bigger impression on the judges than the small shots that Carlos landed. But I don't see how you either don't. We'll talk about this more, but a rematch or why would Carlos need to take some time off?
Well, here's the
again.
Yeah, because he said, he said after the during the press conference, he said he wasn't really sure. Obviously you know this better than I. What your emotional state is right after a fight, and particularly right after a loss, and where you thought it was close. That he said he may retire, and so we were wondering, is it one of those things where, well, if you don't give me a rematch, I'm going to retire. And I'm not saying Carlos is like that, because obviously the guy is a total professional. But you know what I'm saying? Like, is it a real threat? Is it an emotional statement? I'm not sure. And to be honest with you, although I would like to see them fight again because it was so great, I'm not sure. Like, if I'm Carlos, I go in there and I go, okay, Like, I pretty much couldn't have done anything better, right? Like, I feel like he did everything almost perfectly. Like, he looked like he was beating the champion. So if I'm him, I'm thinking, okay, well, what more else could I do? Because I feel like I did everything right. And if I'm Robbie, I go, okay, wow, he almost got me the first time. I thought I was ready. Now I really know what it's like to fight him, and I think it would only benefit Robbie in the rematch.
Yeah, I want to see a rematch. I don't know which way the UFC is leaning on it. If the rematch doesn't happen,
right.
Obviously they've already kind of granted Tyrone the fight in the past. We don't know what's happening.
Well, we don't know. There's a guy named Damian Maia that's sitting there like,
I'm pleading my case for Carlos, who's in my weight class, not to retire because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I think he's a great fighter.
Yeah,
he's truly professional, and he showed his humbleness and his professionalism after the fight. He was so calm during the interview, even at the press conference that you're referring to, when they spoke to him. Are you emotional because of the fight? He said, well, I don't think I'm emotional. I just think, the way that he responded just showed that he almost seemed like he was in a more clear state of mind than normal after a fight. But with that said, don't retire, Carlos. Go do what you want to do. You want to take your family on a vacation? Italy. Do whatever you want to do. Take some time off. I get it. Go for 6 months without training your butt off, train for fun again, and then that fire, you get that itch again. You get that itch, and that's what you need. You want that itch, that fire, before you go out there. You don't want to just force yourself into another fight. So go and enjoy yourself until you get that fire, and then come back, because there's still more fights. I want to see Woodley. If they don't give Carlos the rematch, I want to see Woodley fight Robbie. I would like to see Carlos have a rematch with Rory McDonald.
Yeah,
a great rematch, and then the winner of that fight possibly fights the winner of Rory McDonald. I mean, so with those four right there, there's 3 or 4 fights that I really like to see. So I want him to retire for sure.
No, there are good fights, and I agree. I don't want him to retire either. But as I mentioned here, as we have a minute left in the round here, I mentioned Damian Maia, who was at the fights and stuff, and we brought it up on the show the other day, and Tyron's like, "Motherfucker, what are you doing to me?" You know what I mean? He's like,
Woodley fighting Maia possibly.
Well, that's the whole thing. And so, Damian, is beating people, and he's been around a long time. And I believe that when he had first dropped down to 170, he was told, hey, put together some wins. We'll talk about a title shot. He did put together some wins, stumbled a little bit, but then is back on track, beating guys like Neil Magny, beating Gunny Nelson. And he's a veteran, and he's somebody that's a very difficult fight for people. And so I don't think they really want to hear Damian's name, because they're like, holy crap, he almost beat Rory in the very first round of that one. Had there been another, 15, 20 seconds, he would have choked him out maybe. So I don't know. I could see them doing Tyron versus Damian. I don't know if that's the case. I do also not want Carlos to retire. And for Robbie, also, I do want him to take some time off. Dude, you keep doing these 5-round amazing fights. Just go, relax, chill out, take some time. So, all right, that's the end of round 2. I need to catch my breath here, Alan. I get all fired up again. It's like I just watched it. I'm back on the good water here.
I tried to go with the coffee mug today.
The coffee mug, it's very refined.
They do it on late night TV, so I thought.
Yeah, well, and I just need to get back to the water after the holidays. I didn't.
Yeah, right.
Didn't have as much water as I used to.
Stop drinking champagne in between rounds.
I know. I tell you, that's the one thing at work that's pretty tough is, usually you're literally just sitting around talking about fights with your friends, and there is that feeling of God, if I could only have a beer, or if I could only just sit here and have a beer.
The edge off, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think sometimes on Sundays, I think some of the football guys do have some beers, but not a lot. I mean, they're professionals, but but sometimes we do think, it would be nice if we could sit out here. All right. Well, so as we head into round 3 here. I want to talk about some of the other fights on the card. Specifically, I want to start with Stipe Miocic, who took out Andre Arlovski in 54 seconds. Going into this fight, I definitely thought Stipe would be victorious. He's so athletic, he's so strong, and I really just thought lately he's been putting everything together. And even though he's not a guy that talks a lot, his performances have really done that. And when you look at that Junior Dos Santos fight, it was very close. That 5th round, a lot of people think that Stipe took that one. And so I know that Alistair Overeem just beat Junior Dos Santos, but I kind of am feeling more like I'd like Stipe to get a shot at whoever wins, next month between Fabricio and Cain. What do you think?
I'm on the other side, honestly.
Really?
As a fan of Overeem,
yeah.
It's more intriguing to me if You're talking about so the rematch coming up is Kane
and Fabricio are fighting the first weekend of February.
That could go either way, but I'm just going to assume that the champion retains his belt.
Okay.
That sets up the rematch between Verdum and Dos Santos.
You mean Overeem?
Overeem, thank you. Overeem and
Fabricio.
Fabricio, thank you. When they fought last time, Overeem was huge. Okay,
he was huge, and Fabricio didn't fight like normal.
Yeah, he didn't fight it normal, but that was one of the first fights that I remember seeing Fabricio and thinking, wow, this jiu-jitsu guy really has good striking. Yeah. And then it was later that I realized, no, you know what, he's a badass striker. He was just going against a guy who, let's face it, the guy was just cheating. I'm a big fan of his. I love watching Overeem fight, but the guy was a water balloon in that fight. And Fabricio's striking was landing, it just was bouncing off of his muscles at the time. But Overeem also, I think in that fight, he also had a broken toe. He didn't throw any kicks, really. Yeah. He was kind of just sprawling and punching. I want to see that rematch.
So you want to see the rematch. And you think that Overeem, the way, because to be honest, I like Alistair Overeem too. And I think that when he first got on the scene in the UFC and he came out and did some good things, but then lost some, so then he came back and started fighting a little bit safer, which is smart, you know. He's fighting safer, he's got a smarter strategy, which I like to see, but at the same time, I feel like Stipe would put on a quote-unquote more exciting fight in the guns a-blazing type thing.
He has looked a little safer in his fights.
You know what I mean? And I get it. There's a lot on the line. You're fighting dudes with like 10,000 pounds of pressure or whatever in their hands. So I understand the need to fight smart when you're fighting heavyweight. But I just feel like Stipe I don't know. I just feel like he's maybe hungrier for it. I don't know.
You're right. Stipe probably is the hungrier fighter.
Right.
I think he loses all three of those fights. Okay. And this is not saying that Stipe isn't a world-class athlete and he's not deserving of the title. Right. But when you look at Overeem, I think he loses that battle. When you look at Kane and the champ, both of those fights, I think it's just such tough fights. The heavyweight division, when you start getting in the top 3 or 4 guys, it gets really steep in there. And I think Stipe loses, but that's my opinion.
All right, well, we'll see. You know, and you know, coming up, who knows what's going to happen? You picked Verdum? You said actually you went on record there. You're taking Verdum over Kane.
Yeah, I think so. And he just looks so good. I mean, he's won me over, and now I'm on his team. Yeah.
I hear you. All right. Well, one other fight I wanted to talk about, as we have about a minute and 10 seconds left, is the one that I'm sure factored into your night as well. Timminov versus Larkin. Yeah. You know, I spoke to you about this beforehand, and you talked about how powerful Timminov is and just kind of explodes through the punches. Did you think that he won that fight because it was close?
Man, that was an interesting fight, and that's what we were talking about today at the gym. You know, that's the fun thing about, you know, you watch the fight, you go to the gym on Monday morning, and you discuss it and you debate over it. And we all kind of had different opinions. Everybody, you know, watching it, I've obviously fought Albert. Watching it, I didn't. It's always weird watching an opponent fight who you've already fought, somebody you've already fought. So I was just kind of standing out from the outside and trying to see what the judges might be scoring. And the leg kicks were landing. Yeah. The leg kicks were landing against Albert, but he was also countering back every time. Right. It could have gone either way. It really, really could have gone either way. I think just him pressing forward and landing the more powerful shots is what swayed the judges that way. But, I mean, Lorenz Larkin is such a quick fighter, so explosive. Those leg kicks kept coming. And, you know, I thought he was playing with fire early. Throwing those leg kicks and knowing that he was going to get countered with the straight right hand. They never really landed flush. Albert was never able to land the straight right hand flush on Larkin, so he didn't change his game plan. He kept staying with the leg kicks, and he was doing a good job. He was doing damage, making Albert have to switch his stances, but it just didn't go that way. And for the judges, last thing on that, I don't think the judges in the UFC score leg kicks as highly as they do punches or anything else. I think leg kicks are at the lower of the spectrum for judges.
Yeah, they should do, because as you can see, when you see somebody's like, and then when they have to switch stance, and then what I loved was just Lorenz was like, really? You're going to put it back? That's cool. I can still hit it, you know what I mean? Which I thought was fun. And for you, I had to feel like maybe you're watching that going, if I started a little faster, you know what I mean? Because you can see how Timminov can be beaten. But that's in the past, Alan. We're going to look forward for you. One thing we are going to look at in round 4 is the Rizin event that also went on last week over the course of a couple nights. It was the return of Fedor. I don't know, as a fighter, so many people have strong feelings about Fedor. Are you a guy that thought he's the GOAT, wanted him in the UFC? Has Fedor been a guy you always watched?
I don't have dreams about him at night, but he's definitely. I watched Pride since the beginning. He's definitely the guy, and he deserves everything. Yeah, he wasn't fighting the top guys in the world, but it doesn't matter. Something about the streak that he went on, the way he put guys away, the calm demeanor into the ring, and then explosive striking while in the ring. It just made him like what legends are made of, and I'm a big fan of Fedor. I definitely.
Yeah, well, I did a couple of Fedor fights, and we were actually at the one where Fabricio beat him, which was insane. But I had forgotten, and I was tweeting about this, like I'd forgotten the Fedor music, you know what I mean, the walkout music or whatever. Because I was there when he fought Arlovsky also. And so you're like, most people come out and they're like mental, and then this thing comes on and it's like this Russian drinking song, funeral third set.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, but it's kind of badass, right? And that was the whole thing. I was like, oh, I forgot how awesome this is to see Fedor. And like you said, we know he wasn't going to be fighting some amazing top opponent, but I thought it looked good. It was fun to see him. What becomes of him now, I don't know. That was a long layoff. I don't know how active he's actually going to be, but it is fun in your mind when you start thinking about like who you could see Fedor with. Do you think he would ever come to the UFC?
I don't know. I would like to see before I get there. The only name that comes to mind, because I don't know who's on the Rizin roster,
right?
But King Mo just won was a tournament, right? That was at heavyweight, right? That was a heavyweight.
I think it was light heavyweight. It was heavyweight. Yeah, straight up heavyweight.
It was a hot weight class. It was like 214, I think, that he weighed in at. So I'm assuming he just fought up at heavy. That would be the next step for me. I'm like, okay, King Mo just won the heavyweight tournament. Right. Fedor is your biggest name. King Mo is the second biggest name. Let them match up. If Fedor could get through King Mo, then let's see if he wants to come to the UFC, if they could make that big push and try to promote a big fight with him again.
Yeah, it would be cool. Also in terms of, too, if Fedor goes to Bellator, you have guys like H.E.A.T who are same, age group terms of veterans, know how to really put on a real fight as well. But I agree. It's like, well, how hard does Fedor want to be challenged? Do you know what I mean? Does he want to come back and just like make some money and have a couple fights, or does he want to make a run for titles or who knows what? Because obviously we saw Mo look good, and Mo took home a massive check for that. Did you see that? Like,
should he take home?
Dude, like $300,000.
Did he?
Yeah.
Right, that's why I saw there was a very emotional hug between him and I assume his manager.
Yeah.
The fight, and so I guess his manager was pleased with that fight.
You think? And then and I don't know if you know, like he came home too, and Mo was there in Robbie's corner for the fight as well. Yeah, so there were pictures of them backstage and stuff, and King Mo was right there. So that was cool. It's funny with those events. I don't know. I actually stayed up on some of them and watched them live late at night, and then watched the Breakfast with Fedor thing again. I mean, that whole spectacle element of it is fun. But I don't know. Some of those fights looked a little questionable.
Yeah, I agree, and I was going to touch on both things. It's just inconsistent.
Yeah.
It's a new promotion, and it's Japan, and it's not the UFC where they're able to cut 50 fighters. You know, the UFC cuts 50 fighters who are all champs in other organizations somewhere now. This is still a new organization, and so they're going to have some sketchy fights, some that... I don't think they're doing a lot of testing over there. I don't think the matchmaking isn't that great. King Mo, even though he looked phenomenal, I think one of his fights he was going against a guy that had maybe 3 or 4 fights.
Right.
So it's still questionable matchmaking. I don't think they're doing a lot of drug testing as we touched on. But the spectacle of it, I still really enjoy that. As much as I grew up on the UFC and I love the UFC and that's who I fight for, obviously, so that's what's ingrained in me. It's fun to kind of just sit back and do, like you said, breakfast. I go train, I come back, I have it recorded. 10 p.m., 12 noon, watch some Japanese fighting and the production value and the commentary, woman who screams their name. So
Laney Hart,
I love that stuff. I really love it. It's got kind of like a a feel like a warrior type, Japanese warrior type feel.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we were cracking up too because I don't know about you as we wrap up the round, but I was watching, some Russian feed. Do you know what I mean? And that was just kind of part of it. It was just like sitting around your computer watching a Russian feed at 2 in the morning. That was good. And I don't know if you, people were talking about Gabby Garcia. Have you ever trained with her? Obviously, she crossed over from jiu-jitsu to MMA. It was interesting. I was just curious if you train her because I know she's at King's MMA. Sometimes she knows obviously a lot of the Brazilian guys that you know. I do feel bad because it was her debut and people are acting like she was supposed to be, some top striker. I'm like, dude, this is her first fight. Like, if your first fight was broadcast to the world like that, like, I don't know.
She looked really rough.
Yeah.
It was her debut.
Raw,
And
yeah.
she's a jiu-jitsu champion, and she's only been striking, I don't know, for a year now or so.
That, yeah.
If that. She's been at King's for a limited amount of time. Yeah. You can't expect much. And the thing is, when you first transition into any new martial art, especially striking, you look better on the pads until you get exposed in the fight. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And we kind of saw it with Ronda Rousey, where she's a legit fighter, and she's got legit striking. But once she encountered a higher caliber striker, you saw where her pad work started to fall apart. Now she's getting punched. Right. Now she's not sure where to bob and to weave and how to pop the jab and things like that. For Gabby, she's been doing a little bit of sparring for a couple of months, and she's been hitting pads. You get in a fight, she's throwing swing backhands and stuff. She just wanted to get a hold of that girl.
Exactly.
Strangle on her. That's all she wanted to do. She forgot about 1-2s. She forgot about everything.
Well, exactly. And I'm imagining the adrenaline is going crazy and all that. But as we are in round 5 now, let's talk about, I don't know if there was something that stood out to you from 2015. I don't know if it would be something from your own fight. Or was there, one MMA sort of moment for you that was like the one that made you just kind of sit back and take notice the most?
I'm going to take a small page out of Daniel Cormier's book here and nominate myself for the first...
That's solid. That's solid work.
Because he always does it.
He does.
But the cartwheel kick for me personally was my kind of highlight of 2015. It's something I said it during the interview. I've been landing it for years. Everybody in UFC had been throwing it, and every time they throw it, I'm like, don't land it because I want to be the I want to be the first person that lands it. And so to land it in that fight and then to come out fight of the night, get the bonus, have a great fight. For me, that was one of those fights that, you go have a victory breakfast the next morning, and I'm sitting there with my family with a big grin on my face. And that's what fighting, that's why I love to fight. You come home and you achieve your goals. And that was a fun moment for me personally. Other than that, I mean, every time Conor fought in 2015, and I'm not normally a guy that jumps on the Conor train. Specifically, the Conor fight when he fought Mendez, the spectacle of that. I was actually in my fight week in San Diego. I fought on a Wednesday. I fought on a Wednesday. He fought on a Saturday, I think it was. And so we were all there. Fight week. The whole UFC was at a bar in San Diego. We were watching that fight, and just the spectacle of it, the energy, it had us so pumped up, man. And I think I'll always remember that fight from 2015.
Well, that's cool because that's actually mine too. And it's funny because I make no apologies for being a Conor fan. I think he's awesome. I've actually explained to people that you can like Conor and Jose Aldo. It is possible.
There you go.
I don't know if people realize that. But Conor is great. We do a lot with him and for interviews and that kind of thing. He's always great. But literally, that was my whole thing too, was being there for that weigh-in with Chad. I've been to some big weigh-ins. I've been when Chael and Anderson were fighting, and you've been to some huge weigh-ins. But to sit there and we get to sit close. It's great, for the media. So I'm like, I think 2 rows deep, 3 rows deep or something. And you sort of turn around, you look at the whole arena, like, holy.
What did he have? 10,000, 8,000?
It's ridiculous. Like a sellout. They can't let people.
At this weigh-in, then it was at my fight on Wednesday.
Right. Yeah. So for the weigh-in, then people are singing and chanting and this and that, and the whole all the build-up. There was all these other great fights too, and then you get to that, and it was so intense. And it's funny because we actually talked to him. I asked him about it after that. I said, hey, dude, did you, there was that great picture of Conor where he's on the scale. They took it from behind. I said, did you process that? Like, did you? And he said, no, actually, he didn't. He was so fired up and in his head, and the cut was hard because he didn't know if he was going to fight. So he actually didn't enjoy it. So if you noticed the other night when he fought Jose a couple weeks ago, like, he paused. Like, he actually, you could see him look around, take it in, and enjoy it. And I don't know. That was my favorite thing. But there were some great fights, obviously. But that's the year. It's hard to define 2015 without talking about Conor, and I don't think it means you're a bandwagoner or anything like that. Did you make any resolutions though for 2016? Are you you don't need to probably. Like what does Alan Joe Band like not do top notch?
I appreciate that. I don't know that I guess you call it a resolution. I do a goal sheet. I'm actually really big on it. I do at the beginning of the year. Normally I have it done already. I'm still working on it but I do a goal sheet. I'm really big on short-term, long-term goals, and setting my goals tremendously high. If you don't obtain them, so what? But the worst thing you can do is underachieve, setting your goals so low. So I'm big on that. And for me, it's things about how much money do I want to make? How many fights do I want to fight? I want to fight 3 times. I want to win them all. I want to finish at least 3 fights and at least have 2 bonuses next year, and that's just some of them. So I'm just setting my goals high for this year.
That's cool. And so I know you said there was maybe some rumblings, but you maybe will fight in March?
Yeah, March. Now that we're in January, we're probably going to contact the UFC, get a fight booked. So, cool. I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, the fighter in me, I wouldn't mind getting on that London card.
Yes, February 27th.
Anderson Silva. I think it's on Fight Pass, but you know what? Never been to London. Let's do it. I'm down to fight. I know my manager wants me to wait till March. We'll see what happens. We're gonna get a fight real soon in the next 2 weeks.
Well, and that would work because obviously you know Anderson, you know that team quite well. It'd be kind of helpful for you guys all to get ready to fight.
Fly on a private jet. I'll fly with him on his jet.
Nice. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Wouldn't that? Believe me, we were actually talking about that. And we're like, I know it's on Fight Pass, but it's Anderson and Michael, our buddy Gegard's on there. We're like, we haven't been to London in like same thing. It was like. Yeah. It's actually appealing. If you got on the card, I probably would have to stop.
Let me say real quick, I'm curious about this. Speaking of Fight Pass, the Dustin Poirier fight, that was on Fight Pass. Is that, in your mind, is that a punishment on the UFC's part? Or is that them trying to, I don't see how it can't be some sort of punishment. Or is that them trying to make this big push for Fight Pass? They have Anderson on the Fight Pass now, which is arguably one of the biggest names. They had a Dustin Poirier fight, which months ago was the main event. What's going on with it?
I think he was getting punished just a little bit. We were talking about this at work. And granted, it was a last minute thing, and I understand. You better than I. Last minute change of opponent, and they're pressuring you to take a fight, and you don't want to take the wrong fight, and this and that's. What, I understand why he didn't want to fight before. It did feel like a little bit of a punishment. But if he took it that way and if he used that as any extra motivation, then good on him, because that was an awesome fight.
I want to say that it seemed like he used it as motivation. He fought amazing, and then he was so fired up in his post-fight interview. I've never heard. Maybe he knew he could curse on Fight Pass.
Maybe after Nate Diaz did it, whatever. Everybody's like, whatever.
I never heard him drop so many F-bombs in a post-fight interview, and it seemed like he was fueled up. Like he almost felt like, I have doubters. I need to come back, put on this kind of fight, and next fight is going to be back on a main card or a pay-per-view again. But it's interesting to see such a great fight, such a high-level fight like Dustin Poirier on Fight Pass, and now to have Anderson Silva.
Certainly they do it. Listen, Gustafsson has fought on Fight Pass. They've had Joanna do her title defenses there. So I understand, yes, you need to have product. You need to build it up. And so at least if it's not a punishment, you're putting on people who can deliver great fights. So if it was, and I don't, I'm not sure what he got paid for that or this and that, but it did make us a little crazy that Michael and Anderson are on Fight Pass. We're like, well, for us too, because at work we don't cover Fight Pass shows, and like I want to be there and talk to the winner of that fight. I want to be there, and so that is tricky for me. For 2016, I try to make attainable goals. I think last year it was like try to make the bed every day, which I pretty much did. I think it's made today. I will say this, and it's luckily we, obviously you have to do it as a profession, but that whole sort of, I got to work out more and get more fit, like that doesn't really factor into it because you're always aware of it, and I can't scroll through my timeline without going, Jesus Christ, I gotta go to the gym. And particularly you this morning, my friend, because it was the first day back to school, right? So dropped the munchkin off, and I was like, that's cool. I'm just gonna lay down a little bit more, then I'm gonna get up and go to the gym. And like an hour and a half later, I woke up again. But I was looking through Twitter, and you had some like Equinox.
Oh, you saw? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, God.
Did I motivate you?
Damn it! I was like, this Joe band's like all cut up, and I was like, God damn it! So I didn't have time to go all the way to the gym, but at least I went like for a power walk around a little bit, and I'll do some more with my daughter. But literally, I saw that I was like, son of a bitch.
It's working.
Yeah. No, but it's good. But I need to. Spend more time on my like I used to read a lot more, and then you get in like Fight Head and you're watching fight stuff all the time and doing this. I need to do that, and just some things like I need to like you were saying on the goals, like actually maybe write some things down, even just stupid stuff like if you have a bunch of like paperwork to get done, they say like just try to do 10 minutes a day. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you'll get to it. So
and you're right.
Revolutionary. I'm glad that. Well, yeah, exactly.
You said I do a small attainable, and then some just shoot for the stars.
Some big thing, yeah, for sure. But I am glad that the in-laws are gone because now the house is going back to being like sugar-free more. You know what I mean? Holidays are a little rough. So it's good. But listen, so when you get that fight, I do want to come down and film with you. Obviously, regardless of if the fight gets announced, we definitely want to do that. But where can people find you in the meantime in terms of social media?
As always, at Alan Jouban, AlanJouban. Catch me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and check out my website, alan-jouban.com. It's soon to be alanjouban.com. Yeah. Check me out.
Cool. And you can find me on Twitter at Karyn Bryant, KarynBryant. On Instagram, I'm KB.H.E.A.T. Go to MMA Heat on Facebook, and I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. Oh, you can subscribe to this channel here on YouTube, obviously, YouTube.com/Karyn Bryant. We also have an MMA Heat channel, and we do put these videos up on iTunes as well, so people can go look for them there. So, Alan, coming up, TJ and Dominic.
Oh man,
we may have to talk about that one.
I am so excited for that fight. Oh, I forgot. I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. So, to backtrack real quick, who do you have for Anderson versus Bisping? I put you on the spot.
I mean, shoot. It's hard not to say Anderson. It's hard not to say Anderson. But Michael has so much volume. And he won't get tired. I just fear...
It's underrated wrestling.
Right. It's the southpaw thing. It's hard for Michael. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
So he's had trouble against southpaws.
It's hard. Yeah. Why? Who are you taking?
I don't know, man. I mean, Anderson. I gotta go with Anderson.
I was gonna say you can't make me pick and then not pick. I'll get.
I was just more curious because I don't work with visiting, and you
I know, dude. I don't know because I could see it happen. Like Michael, like I said, the highest significant strike output in the organization. Period. Like the guy is.
Yeah. Michael owns that.
Yeah.
So at 85, that's phenomenal.
And he will not get tired. Where that might be an issue for Anderson after a layoff, and we know it's been there before. I don't know.
Right. That's why we have to watch it.
I know.
Or fight on the court.
I know, and same thing with like TJ and Dominic. My heart has to be with Dom. I've gotten to know him really well, and working with him and just knowing everything he's gone through. But TJ is such a beast, and like the way TJ just shut down Hidden Barral, like damn, the kid's a beast. So I don't know.
It's like Dominic will always win the verbal war, as we saw in interviews. I mean, he TKO'd Dillashaw in that.
And that was just a part of it. There's more. That was just like a teaser for that.
Yeah, I felt bad because Dominic is so. He's a good speaker. He's educated and he's intense. He speaks with intention. And Dillashaw was kind of just like, but Dillashaw was very correct. He said something about I'll do my talking in the cage, and that's what I wanted to note on also. Dominic definitely wins the verbal battle
for sure.
Dillashaw's head, I don't think so. Dillashaw fights a lot better than he speaks.
Yeah.
That said, I think Dominic's angles and everything are gonna be the deciding factor, and I have Dom in that fight, but I can't wait for that fight.
Yeah,
man.
it's gonna be intense, and again, like for me, it's no disrespect to TJ. For me, it's also part of the, I don't know, just like the cosmic storyline of like you can't be the champ and go through that much adversity for the story to be, and you lose. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know, it just feels like the story has to be that you get it back. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Yes, exactly. So again, thank you for getting me motivated to get out the house a little bit tonight. I appreciate it, Alan, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.